mountaintop of Tennessee. Greenest state in the land of the free. Raised in the woods so he knew every tree. Killed him a bar when he was only 3. Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier.
Hello, class. As I promised you, I have brought the questions that you asked to Colonel Davy Crockett, and we're going to get a chance to meet him today and find out a little bit about his life. So, Colonel Crockett, why don't you introduce yourself to the students?
Oh, I'd be glad to, Mr. Glosson. My name is Davy Crockett. I'm half horse, half alligator with a little bit of the snapping turtle thrown in for spice. I got the fastest horse, the surest rifle, the ugliest dog, and the prettiest sister in all the district. My paw can whip his weight in wildcats, and I can whip my paw. But that's not exactly what y'all might call true. In reality, I'm David Crockett of Tennessee. I was born in 1786, not on a mountaintop, but by a river. I did many things in my life, everything from hunter to Army Scout to congressman to what y'all call a hero at the Alamo. And over the years, even beginning in my own lifetime, there were many legends and stories that came up about me, which I let go at the time because it helped me further my career, or so I thought. But I'm here today, as I do every year, to separate the truth from the legend. First thing off the bat, I did not like being called Davy. I'm David. David Stern Crockett from Tennessee. So, y'all have questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Fire off.
All right, the first question comes from Lucy, who asked, what was your family like when you were young?
I was the 5th of 9 children. I had 5 brothers and 3 sisters. We slept on the floor. The boys in a line on the floor on one side of the room, and the girls on the other side. We didn't have any of the pleasantries or amenities that you all have today. Heck, we didn't even have running water. We had to go outside the cabin to a little facility called the outhouse to take care of personal needs and such. We worked all the time. If you wanted to eat, you had to help your ma and your pa cultivate a garden, or you went hunting. There was no electricity. We had candlelight in the evenings, and after a certain amount of time, we blew the candles out and went to sleep because we had to be up before dawn the next morning.
All right, Andrew wants to know, what's it like on the frontier?
What's it like on the frontier? Well, imagine this, Andrew. If you don't have electricity, if you don't have the things that y'all take for granted today, these modern wonders, how do you think you live? You get up in the morning and say, I'm hungry. Is there any food left over from the night before? Or you go outside behind your cabin down to maybe a root cellar, and you'd find some meat that's been salted in a barrel, so the meat would be preserved because we couldn't put anything in the refrigerator. If you wanted something from a store, your basic necessities, like maybe some sugar or some coffee or something, you had to walk or ride a horse several miles to the nearest general store. There wasn't any way to just automatically get things like y'all do now. We didn't have any mass communication. We didn't have any social media. Social media was hollering from one end to the glen to the other. Hopefully somebody listened to you. It wasn't anything like it is today, I have to tell you. No cars, none of that stuff. If you either walked or rode a horse. I don't think y'all like it. You see these here motion pictures and see westerns and so forth, and it was even more harder to live than what they show in the movies.
All right, Rosalinda wants to know, what was clothing like and was it comfortable?
Clothing was basically what you could make. We made our clothing. Your ma would sew and cut gingham and canvas and some cotton fabrics if they had a spindle and they could make cotton. That was comfortable. What you see Davy Crockett in usually, the buckskins, we didn't wear those. I started wearing this only after a play was loosely made about my life, and I wore a hunting shirt, a cloth hunting shirt that went down to the knees when I wanted to go out and hunt. It was durable, but it was comfortable. We wore deerskin breeches, but it wasn't much for keeping off the cold. No, we would wear blanket-made coats. You get a thick material like an old blanket and have it cut up and sewn into a coat to wear. This hat, only good in the wintertime. Of course, y'all see Davy Crockett wearing a coonskin hat all the time. I didn't start wearing this thing until after a play was made. There was a play that was written by a man named John Patrick Paulding called Lion of the West, and it was about a figure named Nimrod Wildfire. And they loosely based him on my life. And he wore this elaborate fur skin outfit and a big bobcat hat on his head. So I took to wearing that because that's what people expected me to wear. I didn't wear it long either.
All right. Several boys wanted to know, how do you fight a bear?
Very carefully. The best way is to shoot him. And make sure when you shoot him, you better know you better bring him down the first time. Usually a shot behind the ear, behind the eye. If you gut shoot a bear, then you got to go chasing him because he's going to wander off into the woods somewhere before he eventually dies. And he can still turn and attack you if you still had enough energy left. If you were somehow attacked by a bear, surprised by a bear, you better have a long knife because you ain't going to get that many opportunities. And then stab him in the eye, try to get him in the heart because he will kill you. And you better be fast because a bear may be big and some of them look like they're just lumbering along, but they are fast.
All right, Emerald wants to know, what was the biggest catch you had when hunting?
There was one year, this is true, this is not legend. One year, one winter, I went out and I shot 100 bear with 99 bullets. Now, remember, in those days, these long guns, these long rifles, shot one mini ball, one bullet at a time, and then you had to reload. So, also, it cost money to get the lead to make your bullets with. So, a good shot had to be very careful how he used his gun. And I was just about out of bullets, and I saw two bears real close together. And I took a chance, aimed, and got them both with one bullet.
Jose asks, what's the freakiest thing that ever happened on the frontier?
I don't know what you mean by freaky, but I can tell you there's one thing that happened in my life that I can never, ever forget. And it was back during the end of the Creek Indian War when I was a scout and a hunter for the Army. My battalion chased a whole mess of Indians into their town. And we fought them, and the survivors all went into a two-story cabin, really. And we surrounded them. And one little old Indian squaw lady came out, and she got a bow, and laying down on the ground, she pulled that string and knocked an arrow in the string and let it fly. And it hit one of our boys. And from that second on, we went in a rage. We went and we attacked that whole house until we got them all cornered in that house. Then we set it on fire, and we could hear them holler and scream. Well, they were calling out to their gods and spirits for somebody to come save them. Well, the next day, there was nothing left but a big old pile of ashes and some burning timbers. And we noticed that there was a root cellar underneath the house, and in it was just stacks and stacks and bags and barrels of taters. And we hadn't eaten nothing in days, really. So we all went down there and we ate them taters. The taters were cooked with the grease of the Indians dripped through the floor. And I'll never forget that. So from now on, then on, If I'm eating and somebody says pass the taters, I pass them on down and I ain't touching them.
All right, Kevin asks, how much money did you have?
Oh, see, that's one thing about me. And my pa was the same way. We weren't what y'all call good money managers. Every time I got money, it somehow got spent. Either I spent it on whatever I needed or whatever I thought I needed at the time, or I invested in business ventures that never really worked out. Like one time, I bought me a distillery. I was gonna distill my own whiskey. It burnt down. At one point, I had a business where I was hauling freight up down the river on a flatboat. I had a flatboat full of supplies for a town and for a store. It sunk. I could not keep any money. Even on speaking engagements, when I'd go give a speech or speak to a group, whatever money I had when we began the thing, somehow it got away from me. So I can't remember how much money I had. I even married a widow who had money so that I could take care of my family better. I was always in debt. So I can't tell you how much I had. I just know I got rid of a lot of it.
Chelsea asks, what was the most difficult time of your life?
Oh. When I come home from the Creek Indian War and was reunited with my beloved wife Polly and our three youngins, John Wesley, William, and little Margaret, whom I later called Polly. Polly took ill. My wife Polly took ill. She was the love of my life. And she died. And I was just devastated. I went out in the woods and stayed for days, wanting to die, really. But I realized that I had them three youngins I had to take care of, and they needed a ma. So I found Elizabeth Patton. She lost her husband during the Creek Indian War, and we married. She had children of her own, and we had what you might call now a blended family. But losing Polly, that was the hardest thing in my life.
Isabella asks, what was it like to be famous?
You know, it's got its good points and it's got its bad points. People's always wanting to buy you a drink or buy you supper. People always want to know about you, but then there comes a time when all people hear is those legendary stories. How did you jump the Mississippi, Davy? How did you ride Haley's Comet, Davy? How did you single-handedly take out a warring band of Creek Indians during the Red Stick War? And people come to expect things, so you have to live up to their expectations. That played a major part in my decision to stay down at the Alamo when all that took place. People expected Davy Crockett to be there fighting off Santa Ana like I'd fight off a bear.
Vincent asks, how did you end up in the Texas Revolution?
Well, you know what the movies say, the stories say. There's that fight for freedom, where we're going to go. Actually, you want to know the real story? Back in them days, in the early 1800s, Texas was the golden land of opportunity. You could get land cheap as long as you went down there and worked it. You could begin again. In fact, many folks from the United States would carve on their cabin doors, GTT, gone to Texas, and load up everything and head to Texas. I figured that if I went to Texas, I could make myself available, maybe restart my political career, because by that time, when I came to Texas, I had just lost the 1835 congressional election. I told my constituents that they could go to hell and I was going to go to Texas. Now, coming down to Texas, when you arrived at Texas, to be eligible to receive leagues of land, you had to sign an oath and promise to do 6 months in the militia. And so I did that. I'd been in militias before. I was even a lieutenant colonel in my militia in Tennessee. That wasn't a problem. And besides, I got to Texas from Tennessee, I thought all the fighting was over. And General Cause had been whooped, and he left San Antonio de Bejar with his tail between his legs. So we thought it was fine to go on down there, and so we went. We didn't figure on Santa Ana wearing out horses to break an army up here to take us out.
Layla asks, on a scale from 1 to 10, how scary was it in the Alamo?
11. And I'll tell you why. You get up, they were shelling us, bombarding us daily. We were scared to move. We couldn't sleep at night much. We were running out of food. We ran out of coffee. The weather was tricky. One day we had a blue norther come in, and it was cold. And then it was rainy, and it just got on your nerves more than anything else. You was hoping that Santa Ana would just wind up attacking us so we could get it over with. I even told Mrs. Dickinson that I wish we could all march out because I don't want to be hemmed up.
All right. Peter asks, what were you thinking about when you were fighting?
Well, when you're fighting, you're not really thinking about much other than you want to survive. Except for, except for that there occasion with the Indians, I didn't do much fighting in the Creek War. And when I was down at Bejar in the Alamo, I could have had it. There's a couple of times I could have got over the wall or snuck out, but I stayed because that's what I needed to do, was to be here with my friends, and that's what everybody expected. But all I was thinking about when I first saw them Mexican soldados come over that wall was, how am I going to get out of this? And I knew I wouldn't.
Ethan asks, do you have any regrets?
Davy don't. Davy is living his legend. But David, I wish I had spent more time before Polly died. After I came home from, even before I went to war, I was always off on hunting trips, and I was always away from home. I regret not being home for her. And then with Elizabeth, my second wife, I never really got to know her much because I was off in the Tennessee legislature and then the Congress, and then I went to Texas, and I didn't get the chance to get to know her and be the husband she really needed. So I regret that, and of course I regret not having much money. But the most important thing of all was not being there for my family like I should have been. It was my biggest regrets.
Any final words you'd like to share with the students?
I want you to remember this, that in your life you're going to be faced with some hard choices. And there's one thing that I live my life by. In fact, it's called my motto, my credo. And I leave this rule for others when I'm dead, that be sure you're right, then go ahead. And do what you always think is right. And maybe you want to think about it a little more than I did, and you might have a little more money and spend more time with family. God bless y'all.
Davy